What if the most heartwarming royal photo of the decade was nothing more than a carefully staged lie? Photographer Alexi Lubomirski, once trusted by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to capture their most intimate royal moments, has just dropped a bombshell. The picture of baby Lilibet, celebrated around the globe as a genuine birthday snapshot, may have been a fully orchestrated PR production. From scripted directions to hidden Netflix motives, new behind-the-scenes revelations paint a very different picture of what really happened that day at Frogmore Cottage. Why did Lubomirski go silent for so long? What forced him to finally speak out? And what does this mean for the public image Harry and Meghan have so carefully constructed? Stay with us. We're about to expose the truth behind the lens. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if one of the most iconic royal photos of the last decade, the image meant to mark a moment of peace, love, and family, was in fact a strategic fabrication staged to mislead the world? The photo in question was hailed as beautiful, innocent, and heartfelt, a sun-drenched portrait of a one-year-old Lilibet Diana, the daughter of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, smiling in a lush green garden on her birthday. It was simple. It was intimate. It was powerful. The image, captured by world-renowned photographer Alexi Lubomirski, was instantly consumed by global media outlets, featured on front pages, and shared by millions on social platforms. Many considered it a healing gesture, perhaps even a soft olive branch extended to the royal family and the public after months of tension, tabloid wars, and televised interviews. But what if that image was never meant to represent truth at all? What if behind the lighting, the soft pastel tones, and that perfectly timed smile was a different reality? One that involved careful manipulation, staged scenes, and a calculated media rollout aligned with private production deals? Photographer Alexi Lubomirski, once one of the Sussexes' most trusted collaborators, has now dropped a revelation so jarring it threatens to shatter that entire narrative. According to emerging reports and cryptic comments from sources close to the shoot, the now famous birthday portrait of Lilibet Diana was not an organic family moment captured in time, but rather a carefully constructed PR weapon used by Harry and Meghan to rebuild their image at a crucial moment. Lubomirski, known globally for his dazzling work with A-listers like Angelina Jolie and Charlize Theron, built his reputation on elegance, discretion, and integrity. He wasn't just a photographer, he was a trusted visual narrator. He shot the Sussexes' engagement portraits, captured intimate moments at their wedding, and seemed to be part of their inner circle during the most transformative years of their public lives. To hear him now question the authenticity of one of their most widely circulated images and imply he may have been used to push a false narrative is not just shocking. It is a seismic betrayal. The timing of this revelation could not be more potent. Just months before this photo's release, the couple had come under intense fire for their Netflix documentary, which some critics claimed was too polished, too contrived, and too detached from the emotional reality of their departure from royal life. Accusations swirled that they were using personal pain for commercial gain, allegations they strongly denied. But now, with the very image of their daughter's birthday celebration under scrutiny, the questions surrounding their public persona have reignited with greater force. Why now? Why would Alexi Lubomirski, a man known for his discretion, come forward after years of silence? And why does this photo matter so much in the larger story of the Sussexes' battle for public perception? To answer that, we need to go back, not just to the day of the shoot at Frogmore Cottage, but to the moment when Meghan Markle and Prince Harry decided to take full control of their media image. It was no secret that their exit from the royal family was not just a family matter, but a brand transformation. In their own words, they wanted financial independence, creative control, and the ability to tell their truth on their terms. But what happens when telling your truth conflicts with the truth? Sources close to the photographer described the Lilibet shoot as tense, overly controlled, and unusually rehearsed. According to one assistant who has since spoken off the record, there was a detailed shot list, down to expressions and angles. Meghan, reportedly dissatisfied with early takes, demanded several retakes of what was supposed to be a candid moment. Harry, by contrast, remained largely silent, occasionally deferring to Meghan's vision for how the final result should look and feel. Even more troubling were the persistent rumors of a discreet Netflix film crew stationed nearby during the shoot, allegedly collecting B-roll footage for future content. While not confirmed on the record, several insiders have hinted that the visual language of the birthday photo, its mood, tone, and even color grading, was consistent with other Sussex-related projects already greenlit by streaming platforms. That raises a deeply unsettling question. Was Lilibet's birthday photo an innocent celebration of life, or a scene from a silent script being edited behind closed doors? In the weeks following the image's release, mainstream media celebrated the photo as a bridge moment, a sign that Harry and Meghan, despite all the drama, still cherished their ties to the monarchy. The Queen, who had reportedly met Lilibet privately for the first time around that same week, was said to have seen the photo and approved its release. Yet, royal aides have since contradicted that claim, suggesting that Buckingham Palace was blindsided by the media storm and had no involvement in how the image was distributed or monetized. Meanwhile, professional photographers and royal biographers began to privately question why the background of the image had such striking similarity to a digitally enhanced set. Some even alleged the possibility of post-production tweaks so subtle that the average viewer wouldn't detect them, tweaks that may have smoothed lighting inconsistencies, enhanced the background flora, or even digitally softened Lilibet's face to project innocence. Alexi Lubomirski, when questioned directly in a closed forum, did not deny the claims. In fact, he reportedly said, "It wasn't the shoot I thought it would be." That phrase alone sent tremors through royal circles and media agencies alike. What did he mean? Did he feel coerced? Was he asked to photograph something he later realized was designed for a different purpose? As news of this began to leak across industry channels, another troubling pattern emerged. Several of Lubomirski's assistants, stylists, and production partners, many of whom had worked with him on royal-related shoots, began sharing subtle, carefully worded stories of how unusual the Sussex collaborations had been. One former lighting technician described the shoot environment as more like a set than a garden. Another noted that most of the natural light was faked, with artificial lighting rigs placed out of frame. Still another recalled being asked to sign a confidentiality agreement unusually strict for a simple birthday portrait session. All of this adds weight to what many already suspected: that the photo of Lilibet Diana was not merely a snapshot of royal life, but a calculated attempt to tell a story, one that aligned perfectly with the Sussexes' larger narrative goals. And here lies the central issue. Photos matter, especially when those photos are used as tools of influence. In an age of deepfakes, AI editing, and influencer curation, authenticity has become the rarest currency of all. When a royal couple, who built much of their new brand on being real, vulnerable, and misunderstood, is accused of constructing their most emotional family moments with cinematic precision, it leaves the public questioning everything. Who is being genuine? Who is performing? And who is controlling the lens? This isn't just about one photo anymore. It's about a trend, a pattern of behavior that raises important ethical questions about trust, image, and manipulation in the modern media landscape. As we dive deeper into this investigative journey, you'll hear what Alexi Lubomirski allegedly revealed in private messages. You'll examine the inconsistencies between the official story and what insiders now claim happened. You'll see how this moment fits into the larger web of Harry and Meghan's ongoing PR evolution, and what it means for their legacy, their family, and the public that's watched it all unfold. Because sometimes, the most powerful lies are the ones told in the light. It is often said that the person behind the camera sees more than we ever will. And when that person is Alexi Lubomirski, one of the world's most acclaimed photographers, the stakes go far beyond just image. They touch legacy, symbolism, and truth. To understand why his recent revelation about the Lilibet Diana birthday photograph has rocked public trust in Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, one must first understand exactly who Alexi is and why his voice carries so much weight. Alexi Lubomirski was not just some hired hand or last-minute photographer. He was, in every professional and emotional sense, part of the Sussex story. Born in England in 1975 to a Polish-French noble lineage and a multicultural upbringing, Alexi was never meant to be a tabloid figure. He spent his early life bouncing between continents, Botswana, England, and the United States, absorbing cultures, languages, and, perhaps most significantly, philosophies. His identity was never rooted in glamour. It was forged in curiosity, aesthetics, and precision. And from a young age, Alexi was obsessed with the art of visual storytelling. He trained under the legendary fashion photographer Mario Testino, a man best known for his stunning portraits of Princess Diana, and learned how to merge elegance with honesty, opulence with soul. Alexi quickly carved out his niche, not only working with fashion juggernauts like Harper's Bazaar, Vogue, but also earning a reputation as a photographer who could capture the subtle contradictions in celebrity, the tension between image and identity. It was no surprise, then, that he became the go-to photographer for high-end, emotionally resonant portraits that straddled the line between fine art and commercial perfection. His portfolio is a who's who of Hollywood's elite: Beyoncé, Julia Roberts, Jennifer Aniston, Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie. But what set him apart wasn't just his client list. It was how his subjects looked through his lens: softer, more human, less polished yet more powerful. He believed in what he called ethical aesthetics, a balance between truth and beauty. His shots weren't just poses. They were windows into persona, sometimes playful, sometimes melancholy, always deliberate. So when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle reached out to Alexi in 2017 to photograph their engagement, it wasn't just a booking, it was a strategic alignment. Meghan, already deeply media-savvy from her years in Hollywood, understood the value of optics. Harry, wary of the British press but eager to rebrand his image as a modern royal, also saw Alexi as someone who could humanize without sensationalizing. The engagement photos that emerged from that shoot, taken at Frogmore House, were celebrated worldwide. They didn't just show love. They showed transformation. This wasn't the stiff, archaic royalty the public had grown used to. This was something new, cinematic, multicultural, and emotionally forward. From that moment on, Alexi became a silent partner in the Sussex image machine. He wasn't just behind the lens. He was part of the architecture. He photographed the royal wedding, capturing moments that were plastered on front pages and reposted endlessly. Each frame helped redefine what a royal couple could look like in the 21st century: diverse, dynamic, almost rebellious. And through it all, he maintained a quiet presence. No tell-all interviews. No unauthorized commentary. Just the work, beautiful, pristine, and respected. But that's what makes his latest action so jarring. Photographers, especially at his level, do not speak lightly. For Alexi to question the integrity of the Lilibet birthday shoot is more than just a professional critique. It's a rupture of trust, a statement that something crossed the line, a line he spent his entire career guarding. It's important to note that Alexi Lubomirski is not just a man with a camera. He is also a practicing Buddhist, a father, and a published author of spiritual and ethical reflections. He's written books about identity, integrity, and navigating modern life with honor. His personal philosophy centers on humility and purpose. This is not someone prone to gossip or sensationalism. His silence over the years was not due to fear, but discipline. So when he speaks, even indirectly, it sends ripples. What then could have triggered this quiet storm? To some, it may seem like a betrayal that a once trusted artist would even hint at misconduct or manipulation by his royal clients. But for others, it reads as an act of courage. A stand for artistic integrity in an age where even a child's birthday portrait can be weaponized for influence. The moment he agreed to photograph Lilibet Diana on her birthday, expectations were high. This was no longer just another editorial shoot. It was a moment with global weight. And yet, according to whispers from within his studio, that very pressure may have been what unraveled the truth. Alexi's role during the shoot wasn't simply to capture emotion, it was to construct it. The Sussexes, reportedly operating with an unrelenting attention to detail, handed down what some insiders called visual mandates. Requests that went beyond lighting and angles into more narrative-driven demands, positioning Lilibet against a specific backdrop, capturing smiles at precise moments, repeating shots that didn't align with a preconceived vision. For a man like Alexi, that was new territory. Controlled environments? Not unusual. But contrived outcomes? That blurred the lines. After the shoot, there were rumors that he refused to endorse any media narrative spun around the photo, that he declined to participate in behind-the-scenes documentaries tied to the image, that he even pulled back from future offers related to the Sussex brand. For a photographer whose career was deeply tied to ethical storytelling, the experience may have felt like crossing a professional and personal Rubicon. But what may have ultimately tipped the scales was the public reaction. Millions embraced the photo. Thousands praised Alexi's work. And yet, only he knew what went on before and after the shutter clicked. The quiet choreography, the meticulous edits, the reality behind the illusion. That burden, the burden of knowing, is what set this slow burn into motion. And while he has not come forward with a detailed public interview, his off-the-record remarks, carefully worded social media captions, and sudden disengagement from Sussex-related projects tell a story all their own. A story of disappointment. A story of a man who feels, perhaps, used. In recent months, Alexi has begun collaborating with photographers and journalists known for their focus on visual integrity. He's joined panels discussing the ethics of image manipulation, the dangers of curated storytelling, and the impact of visual deceit in an age where perception often outpaces reality. Some believe these moves are part of a quiet realignment, a way to return to his roots after having his values compromised by one of the most high-profile gigs of his life. As for his current projects, they remain fiercely independent. Intimate portraits of activists, low-budget shoots with refugees, and collaborations with NGOs around the world. A far cry from castles and crowns. But perhaps, for him, a necessary recalibration. Alexi Lubomirski, once known only as the artist who framed the Sussex fairy tale, is now something more dangerous to their narrative, a witness. A witness who saw the scenes behind the show. A witness who, even in measured language, has said enough to change the way we view one of the most shared images of 2022. He may not have screamed it from the rooftops, but in the world of royal optics, sometimes a single whisper can topple an entire illusion. There are photographs that freeze time. And then there are photographs that rewrite narratives. The image of Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor sweetly smiling in a meadow-like garden setting on her first birthday was not just a portrait of a royal child. It was a global statement. A moment captured with calculated tenderness, carefully released to the world, and widely interpreted as a sign that the most fractured royal relationship in modern history might be on the brink of healing. But that's the surface. To understand why this photo reverberated the way it did, we must revisit the emotional, political, and cultural backdrop against which it was taken, and why this single image, more than almost any other, became a symbol not only of innocence but of power. June 4, 2022. The Platinum Jubilee weekend. Queen Elizabeth II's historic celebration was in full swing, an event meant to highlight stability, endurance, and the monarchy's future. It was also the first public occasion Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had attended in the United Kingdom as a couple since stepping back from royal duties and launching their American media ventures. The press was abuzz with speculation. Would there be a reunion? Would they appear alongside senior royals? Would the Queen meet her namesake great-granddaughter, Lilibet Diana? Then, almost quietly, amidst the fanfare and staged events of the Jubilee, a single photo was released to the public. It showed Lilibet, red-haired and beaming, sitting on a soft green lawn in a pale blue dress with a bow in her hair. The location? Frogmore Cottage, the Sussexes' former UK residence, and the site of their more private family moments. The photographer? None other than Alexi Lubomirski, the same man who had shot their engagement photos and wedding portraits. The message was crystal clear. This was family. This was full circle. This was them reclaiming their narrative. But almost immediately, the story around the photo became larger than the image itself. Major news outlets around the world ran the picture on their front pages. Social media platforms exploded with admiration. Royalists and Republicans alike paused. The photo was seemingly simple, yet emotionally loaded. It presented Lilibet not as a figure of controversy or inheritance, but as a child. A joyful, innocent, giggling toddler, untouched by scandal, unimpressed by power. It was a subtle but powerful reminder that no matter what drama unfolded between parents, politics, and press, the next generation was here. And she was smiling. The fact that this image was released independently, through the couple's own channels and not via official palace communication teams, was itself a quiet statement. Harry and Meghan were asserting that they were no longer dependent on royal approval or coordination. They didn't need the royal press office. They didn't need the front-page splash of the Times. They had their own global influence and their own machinery to distribute it. Critically, the timing couldn't have been more deliberate. The photo's release came just one day after a reported private meeting between Queen Elizabeth II and Lilibet at Windsor Castle, the only time the monarch is known to have met her great-granddaughter before her death. The Sussexes chose not to publish any images from that meeting, reportedly out of respect for the Queen's wishes. But by releasing a portrait of Lilibet the next day, shot in an iconic location tied to their British royal history, they ensured this symbolic impact would not be lost. Here was a child named after two of the most influential women in modern royal history, Elizabeth and Diana, being celebrated publicly in a way that merged personal legacy with public redemption. It wasn't just a birthday photo. It was an origin story visually authored for maximum emotional resonance. But behind the photo's impact lay layers of strategic orchestration. The composition of the image was not accidental. Lilibet sits in an unmanicured patch of green, surrounded by natural flora, under diffused lighting that gives the image a dreamy quality. Her clothing is understated, charming, and casual, far from aristocratic but deeply photogenic. The frame excludes any visible branding, any adult presence, or any visual distractions. There's no sense of pomp, no palace gates, no heraldry. Just a child in her moment. Critics and analysts would later dissect the image for its storytelling elements. The lighting, which mimics the golden hour softness of professional portraiture, was said to have been enhanced. The color grading, noted for its warmth and consistency with previous Sussex visuals, matched scenes from their Netflix documentary. Lilibet's expression, so perfectly timed and candid, raised questions about how many takes were required, how long she had to sit in position, and how the moment was choreographed. But all of these technical points only mattered because the image worked. In the days following its release, online sentiment surged. Hashtags trended. Thousands of fans reposted the image with captions like, "Royal Blood," "California Soul," and "This is the real monarchy of the future." Fan pages edited the photo into tributes, mashups with images of Diana, and speculative projections of what Lilibet might look like at 20. To millions, she became not just a royal child, but a character in a transatlantic saga of rebellion, loss, and hope. However, not all reactions were warm. Several British tabloids questioned the timing of the photo's release. Royal insiders, speaking off the record, described the move as calculated, even provocative, given its placement during Jubilee weekend. While the Sussexes had been invited to select events, their attendance was deliberately minimized by palace protocol, allegedly to avoid overshadowing the Queen. The release of the Lilibet photo, then, was seen by some courtiers as a direct attempt to hijack media cycles and redirect public focus toward Harry and Meghan. Even more controversial was the absence of the Queen in the image, or any other member of the royal family. While the Queen's private meeting with Lilibet was acknowledged, no joint photos were shared. Palace sources later suggested that Meghan and Harry had requested an official photograph with the Queen and Lilibet but were denied, a claim neither side confirmed but one that fueled speculation about ongoing tensions. Still, the image became part of the couple's growing visual arsenal, a collection of high-production, emotionally curated photographs used to craft and reinforce their evolving brand. Like their Oprah interview, their Time magazine cover, and their Netflix docuseries, the Lilibet birthday photo felt less like a personal memento and more like a narrative device. It served a purpose. It filled a gap in the public's emotional connection to their family. And it bought them something no publicist could: empathy. The image's significance grew over time. It was used in media retrospectives about Meghan's motherhood. It appeared in documentaries and profiles discussing the legacy of Princess Diana. It even circulated again after Queen Elizabeth's death, with royal commentators reflecting on the continuity of the Windsor line. But as time passed, some viewers began to look closer. Several photography professionals began discussing the photo in technical forums, noting unusual consistencies in lighting and skin texture. A few questioned whether Lilibet had been digitally enhanced to soften facial shadows or blemishes, standard in fashion photography, but controversial in family portraits. Others wondered why no candid images from the party, which allegedly included close friends and family, had ever emerged. Where were the other children? The candid cake-cutting moment? The group shots? These silences, once overlooked, began to echo. And that's when whispers from inside Lubomirski's circle began to surface. Whispers that the shoot wasn't what it appeared, that it had been more tightly controlled than any royal shoot he'd done, that it felt more like a film set than a family celebration, and that despite the smiling child in the photo, the atmosphere on-site was tense, rehearsed, and deeply transactional. If true, these details don't just undermine the emotional impact of the image, they reframe it as an act of stagecraft, a moment designed not for memory, but for persuasion. So why does this photo still matter? Because images like this shape perception, not just of individuals, but of institutions. They inform how we view the monarchy, the idea of authenticity, and the evolving relationship between celebrity and royalty. When such an image is revealed to be curated or misleading, the betrayal is not just personal, it's collective. And yet, this is precisely why the image remains powerful. It is both beautiful and suspicious, both intimate and engineered. It is the perfect metaphor for the Sussexes' post-royal identity, caught between public storytelling and private truth. As we move forward into deeper layers of this investigation, one question lingers like a shadow behind the photo's bright colors. When the truth is edited out of frame, what remains? For a long time, the narrative surrounding the now iconic Lilibet Diana birthday photo was sealed in warmth and media reverence. The image offered simplicity, elegance, and a much-needed breath of positivity amid months of friction between Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the British royal family. But behind every picture-perfect moment lies a series of decisions, choices, and, sometimes, uncomfortable truths. And in this case, the facade began to crack, not in headlines, but in hushed comments, vanished posts, and subtle contradictions that refused to stay buried. It all began with whispers. At first, they were easy to ignore, insignificant murmurs in celebrity circles about how overproduced the photo shoot had been. People assumed it was typical celebrity-level control, especially from a couple so famously conscious of image. But the comments didn't stop. They began to coalesce into something more concrete. Photographers, stylists, assistants, individuals on the periphery of the production began recounting their experiences with the shoot, and their words were not aligned with the soft tones of the final image. One former production assistant, speaking anonymously to protect their future work, said, "There was nothing natural about that day. Every flower, every frame, every shadow, it was planned. This wasn't a birthday party. It was a brand exercise." The assistant went on to describe an unusually tense atmosphere. According to them, Meghan arrived early and immediately began directing the layout, instructing the lighting crew on where to position the reflectors, choosing specific props that had been flown in from the US, and reviewing camera settings with an almost obsessive focus. She wasn't just participating, she was producing. It became clear to everyone on set that this was not simply a photo to remember Lilibet's milestone. It was content. The staging began well before Lubomirski even arrived. The lawn was prepped and manicured not by groundskeepers, but by a private team of set decorators. Decorative objects were added, rustic wooden benches, vintage toys that evoked a timeless charm, and curated floral arrangements that matched color themes used in previous Sussex-related visuals. None of this would be out of place in a high-end magazine shoot. But this was being sold to the world as an intimate family moment. The pressure was immense. And for the man behind the camera, it was impossible to ignore. Alexi Lubomirski, known for his calming presence and discretion, was said to be visibly uncomfortable as the shoot progressed. According to two sources who claimed to have been present, he appeared distracted, even reluctant, as the session veered from spontaneous portraiture into tightly orchestrated production. He kept glancing at his notes, then back at Meghan, one crew member said. You could tell he wanted to make her happy, but he also knew this wasn't what he was hired for years ago. This wasn't the same couple that came to him for their engagement photos. Even the setup of Lilibet's seating became a subject of control. The team reportedly brought in multiple seating options, from rustic blankets to ornate stools, all to see which conveyed the most authentic look. Meghan insisted on removing certain props she felt were too busy and favored a minimalist aesthetic that allowed Lilibet's red hair and pale blue dress to pop. This wasn't about capturing a real birthday party. There were no messy cake moments, no other toddlers giggling nearby, no unguarded family shots of Meghan, Harry, and their daughter mid-laughter. Instead, it was a staged isolation of Lilibet, crafted to feel spontaneous but engineered for global consumption. Then there was the lighting, a detail small to the untrained eye but revealing to professionals. Instead of relying on natural light, which had been soft and golden on the day of the shoot, large professional reflectors and artificial lighting rigs were used to sculpt a very specific atmosphere. It wasn't just about clarity, it was about mood. And the mood was intentional. The image needed to feel warm, gentle, timeless, a tone that aligned with the couple's broader public messaging. Multiple crew members said the shoot lasted longer than any child's patience typically allows. Lilibet was reportedly coaxed into place multiple times, gently repositioned, and encouraged to smile at cues she didn't understand. While none described the child being mistreated, all agreed that the shoot lacked the organic energy you would expect from a first birthday celebration. It felt more like a photo op than a party. Still, none of this would have raised major flags until after the shoot concluded. Sources close to Lubomirski began noticing a shift in his demeanor. Normally enthusiastic about his royal collaborations, he suddenly grew distant when asked about the Lilibet photo. He declined interviews. He made no promotional posts about the shoot on his official channels, an unusual move, given that most of his royal work had previously been part of his portfolio. In fact, the Lilibet image did not appear on his official website for weeks. When it finally did, it was tucked in discreetly with minimal description. And then came the deleted posts. On Instagram, Lubomirski briefly uploaded a caption under the photo that read, "Some moments are captured, others are constructed." The quote, vague but philosophical, was quickly removed and replaced with a simpler caption, "An honor to capture this beautiful day." Some followers screenshotted the original, and in the months that followed, speculation around its meaning began to rise. Was he alluding to something he knew? Something he regretted? Other red flags began to emerge. One crew member revealed that the team was required to sign unusually strict NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, including clauses that prevented them from confirming or denying whether certain individuals, including Netflix affiliates, were present on set. This was strange, considering the public narrative had painted the shoot as a private affair, not a media project. It was also revealed that shortly after the photo's release, one tabloid journalist received an anonymous tip that behind-the-scenes footage had been captured by a third-party team for future content. The footage, according to the source, would be used either in a Sussex-affiliated documentary or as part of a visual retrospective for a digital platform. The photo, then, wasn't just a memento, it was a production still. These cracks were further widened by the lack of alternate angles or outtakes. Typically, in such events, even if the couple only releases one official image, other candid or informal shots surface, shared by friends, family members, or casual guests. Yet, for this birthday celebration, there was complete visual silence outside the sanctioned portrait. Not one additional frame. Not one spontaneous laugh. Not one behind-the-scenes shot with the parents. The silence was deafening. Then, as scrutiny increased, Meghan and Harry's representatives issued a brief statement through their media team. It clarified that the photo was taken by a close friend and described the occasion as a relaxed afternoon with family and close friends. Yet, no guests, other than a few named associates, ever confirmed their presence. No other guests posted any photos. No family members made reference to it. And no member of the working royal family publicly acknowledged Lilibet's birthday in real time, despite the Sussexes' claims of invitations being extended. The photo, which had initially seemed like a bridge between past and present, started to resemble something else entirely, a mirage, a projection, a well-lit, perfectly staged symbol of family unity, designed with more than just memories in mind. It's in this context that Alexi Lubomirski's silence and subtle unease becomes so telling. In the months following the release, he increasingly aligned himself with panels and thought leaders focused on photographic ethics. He declined several offers to appear in Sussex-related retrospectives, and according to two credible sources in the fashion photography industry, he turned down an exclusive profile opportunity with a major American magazine, a piece that would have centered on his royal photography legacy. That decision, especially for someone whose entire reputation rests on discretion and select visibility, raised questions. Why retreat now? Why distance himself from the one image that seemed destined to become one of his most widely circulated works? Because perhaps, behind the scenes, he realized what many had begun to suspect, that the shoot was never about documenting a child's birthday. It was about delivering a story, a controlled, commercial, premeditated story. As we begin to piece together the motives behind this calculated image, the central question becomes increasingly clear. Who benefits when authenticity is traded for narrative? Lubomirski, it seems, found himself caught between two worlds, the world of ethical photography and the machinery of modern media royalty. In the end, he may have chosen silence over scandal, professionalism over protest. But that silence, when placed beside the fragmented clues from crew members, insiders, and conflicting statements, speaks louder than words. The photo was always beautiful. But now, with the curtain drawn back ever so slightly, it carries something else. A quiet unease, a polished lie, a carefully chosen fiction posing as truth. Behind every public image, especially one wrapped in emotional resonance and soft lighting, there often lies a silent script. Not one written in ink, but embedded in staging, cues, instructions, and timing. In the case of the Lilibet Diana birthday photograph, the notion of spontaneity was part of the illusion. What has now come to light through the testimonies of insiders, anonymous crew members, and close observers is a deeply troubling suggestion. The photo was not just managed or guided. It was planned, executed, and delivered according to a rigid, deliberate visual script, one designed not merely to mark a birthday, but to carry the weight of rebranding, repositioning, and ultimately, reputation salvation. The idea of a script here is not metaphorical. According to at least two individuals with direct knowledge of the shoot, there were actual printed documents provided to select team members in the days leading up to the session. These documents outlined shot compositions, prop placements, mood descriptions, and, most telling of all, targeted public interpretations. One line, as paraphrased by a crew member who claimed to have viewed it, read, "This image should convey unity, legacy, and joyful independence. Focus on warmth, sunlight, and subtle royal cues." The presence of such a directive points to a level of coordination far beyond a typical family photo shoot. Photographers often enter shoots with visual mood boards or stylistic guides, especially when working with celebrities. But rarely do they receive emotionally coded scripts designed to guide not just what's captured, but what is felt by viewers. At the heart of this secret script was the desire to evoke controlled nostalgia. Meghan and Harry, aware of the visual legacy they were stepping into, allegedly aimed to connect Lilibet's image with powerful associations, the late Princess Diana's compassion, the Queen's longevity, and their own story of breaking free. The location was chosen with care: Frogmore Cottage, the same residence that had been part of their final days as working royals. The setting was designed to appear natural, but only to the extent that it reinforced the right emotions. Everything had a purpose. Nothing was accidental. Sources describe how Meghan was particularly involved in mood design. She allegedly directed the inclusion of a specific floral arrangement that symbolized British roots and Californian growth, a combination of forget-me-nots, Diana's favorite flower, with eucalyptus and native Californian poppies. The combination was never overtly discussed publicly but was intended to be part of the visual subconscious for viewers. Small cues that told a story without requiring explanation. Then came the wardrobe design. Lilibet's outfit was chosen with exacting detail. The baby blue dress was selected not just because it was aesthetically pleasing, but because it mirrored a shade worn by Diana in several of her most famous maternal photos. Her bow, reportedly chosen by Meghan herself, was a nod to the sort often worn by Princess Charlotte in official royal photographs, offering a subtle link between the royal cousins despite the family's physical and emotional distance. One insider even suggested that Harry reviewed reference photos of himself and William as young boys prior to the shoot, in order to shape the feel of how Lilibet should be presented. Though the toddler was not coached, sources agree her smiles and gestures were genuine. Her positioning, gaze direction, and timing were carefully managed by handlers behind the lens. She was never forced, but the environment she existed within that day had been molded in advance for maximum narrative impact. This, according to industry veterans, crosses the line between image capture and image construction. In commercial advertising, constructing a narrative through visuals is standard practice. Every bottle, model, and blade of grass is placed for effect. But when that same methodology is applied to a family photo, especially one presented to the world as a moment of pure personal celebration, the ethical waters grow murky. The most significant element of the so-called secret script was the absence it created. Specifically, the deliberate omission of Meghan and Harry from the final published image. By releasing only a solo shot of Lilibet, they avoided the complexities of public reaction to their own faces. It removed tension. It silenced critics who might analyze posture, expressions, or side glances. And it placed the focus squarely on the child. Unencumbered by drama, untouched by conflict. Yet this choice was not spontaneous. It was strategic. According to a stylist who worked briefly with the team prior to the shoot, multiple wardrobe changes were prepared for Meghan and Harry as well. Outfits that coordinated with Lilibet's dress were steamed and set aside, suggesting that there were plans, or at least options, for group shots. But no such images were ever released, and none have surfaced through leaks or unofficial channels. The implication? Photos may have been taken and deliberately shelved, or they were never captured at all. Either way, the decision to feature only Lilibet turned out to be a brilliant and highly calculated PR move. Additionally, instructions allegedly included rules about background visibility. A garden setting was selected because it allowed visual ambiguity. Unlike a recognizable palace interior or a public event space, a garden offers symbolic neutrality. It doesn't tether the photo to a place of conflict like Windsor or Buckingham. It also connects the image to themes of growth, peace, and rebirth, common motifs in the Sussex narrative since their royal exit. But the script went deeper still. According to a member of the photography crew, there were verbal discussions about how the final image should be timed with other media releases. Netflix was in post-production on the couple's docuseries. Spotify was preparing a new podcast release. Meghan's children's book had just hit shelves. The photo, in this context, was not merely a memory. It was an asset, one meant to soften public sentiment and provide a human face to what critics were calling a commercial onslaught. This is where ethical lines begin to blur. In one alleged behind-the-scenes conversation, a team member reportedly asked about the possibility of B-roll footage being used in upcoming projects. The question was brushed aside. But others claimed that Netflix producers were at least partially involved in pre-shoot planning conversations, not necessarily on set, but in advisory roles regarding tone and branding. This remains unconfirmed, but consistent with multiple accounts of media-aligned planning surrounding other Sussex public appearances. These subtle interconnections paint a troubling picture, not of outright lies, but of deliberate shaping, of a moment reimagined as a message. When the photo was finally released, the caption that accompanied it was brief and elegant. It mentioned the joy of the day, the simple celebration, and the photographer who had captured the family's love. But the caption made no mention of set design, floral symbolism, lighting arrangements, or editorial input. It said nothing about NDAs, nothing about marketing strategy, and certainly nothing about the emotional framework written behind the scenes. That is the power of scripting. It allows you to control not just the frame, but the feeling. In the weeks after the release, a handful of PR professionals came forward anonymously to praise the image rollout as one of the most masterful emotional resets in celebrity history. One industry veteran remarked, "That photo did more for their public image than the Oprah interview, the podcast, or the Netflix deal combined." It's the perfect synthesis of story and softness. But not everyone was so complimentary. Critics accused the couple of exploiting their daughter's image to clean up public perception. Others pointed out that by staging and scripting such a moment, they undermined the very authenticity they claimed to stand for. "You can't sell realness while producing perfection," one British tabloid columnist wrote. The conversation shifted quickly from admiration to suspicion. And once that doubt entered the public consciousness, the cracks began to widen. Every element was reconsidered, every color questioned, every shadow scrutinized. Now, as Alexi Lubomirski's quiet discomfort becomes more visible, those whispers have turned into echoes. The idea that the photo was not just arranged, but pre-written, down to its mood and reception, makes it more than a portrait. It makes it a performance. The final irony? For all its polish and production, the image of Lilibet Diana remains undeniably beautiful. And maybe that's the real tragedy here. That even the most precious moments are no longer safe from strategic intent. That innocence is no longer sacred, but instrumental. The secret script behind the Lilibet photo may never be published. But the evidence, piece by piece, tells the story. And it's not just about a photo anymore. It's about how stories are told when no one is supposed to know their stories at all. In the world of high-stakes branding, perception isn't just important, it's everything. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, this reality became even more critical after their departure from the British royal family. Cut off from the institutional machinery that once managed their image, the couple quickly found themselves in uncharted territory, navigating global scrutiny, political intrigue, and commercial opportunity without the traditional buffers of palace advisors and official protocols. In that vacuum, one element rose to dominance: the power of media control. At the heart of that control was Netflix. When Harry and Meghan inked a reportedly $100 million deal with Netflix in 2020, it was seen as a bold and unprecedented move. No member of the royal family, former or otherwise, had ever made such a public leap into the entertainment world. For their supporters, the deal symbolized independence and innovation. But for critics, it was the start of a calculated campaign to monetize their royal status under the guise of storytelling. It wasn't just a business move. It was an entire shift in how they would interact with the world, and how the world would be encouraged to see them. The Lilibet Diana birthday photo, while seemingly disconnected from Netflix's glossy streaming platform, now appears under the weight of emerging evidence as one of the first strategic visual moments designed to seamlessly feed into that larger media narrative. To understand how that photo fits into the Sussexes' Netflix strategy, we have to look at the timeline. The Lilibet photo was released in June 2022, mere months before Netflix debuted its highly anticipated Harry and Meghan docuseries in December that same year. The timing was suspiciously precise. The photo softened public opinion. It reminded viewers of the human element, a baby's smile, a birthday, a family moment. But more than that, it reset the emotional stage just before the couple's media machine went into high gear. Multiple PR analysts agree the photo's timing was not accidental. It acted as emotional preparation, a warm-up act. After months of negative headlines, lawsuits, and ongoing royal disputes, the image of an innocent child framed within a visually nostalgic setting gave the couple breathing space. It provided a sense of normalcy and sincerity that would become essential when their Netflix content dropped. Content that would dive into systemic racism, tabloid cruelty, and family betrayal. The Lilibet image also served as a gentle reminder of lineage, of blood ties, of royal history. Yet, critically, it did so without including the British royal family at all. That was the pivot, keeping the visual tone of royalty while cutting the institution out of the frame. One executive familiar with media positioning strategies said, "This was about brand alignment. The Sussexes don't need the monarchy anymore to look royal. They need moments that feel royal, and this photo did exactly that." The Lilibet photo, therefore, acted as what media insiders call a soft anchor, a standalone piece of content that reinforces a broader emotional narrative across platforms, without seeming overtly promotional. And that brings us directly to the Netflix deal. From the very beginning, Harry and Meghan's partnership with Netflix was structured as both a commercial venture and a storytelling vehicle. Their Archwell Productions banner promised to produce content that informs, elevates, and inspires. But as public pressure mounted to deliver results on the massive contract, the couple appeared to lean more heavily into personal material, stories from their own lives, reflections on their trauma, and explorations of their emotional journey away from the crown. To do that effectively, they needed not only words, but images, visual proof points that could support their claims and further humanize their narrative. The Lilibet birthday photo was a key entry into that portfolio. Although the image was not formally included in the Netflix docuseries, its aesthetic language, muted tones, slow panning shots, childlike innocence, was unmistakably echoed in the show's production. What's more, according to two individuals with connections to the Netflix development team, there were discussions about including behind-the-scenes footage from the birthday party or the photo session itself. These conversations reportedly took place months before the documentary was finalized, indicating that Netflix was at least peripherally involved or interested in mining the image's emotional capital. This raises serious questions about the line between private family moments and commercial exploitation. When a photo of a child is released to the world, only to be later revealed as part of a broader PR strategy aligned with a billion-dollar streaming platform, how much of that child's image still belongs to the family? And how much of it has become a tool? Netflix, for its part, has declined to comment on any direct involvement with the photo shoot. Officially, the platform maintains that all content associated with the Harry and Meghan series was gathered independently and that personal photos were supplied voluntarily by the couple. However, this doesn't account for the broader overlap in aesthetics, tone, and timing. It also doesn't explain the uncanny coordination between image releases, media interviews, and strategic content drops. For instance, the Lilibet photo was released almost simultaneously with Meghan's children's book promotion and just weeks after Netflix's quiet confirmation that the Sussex documentary was in post-production. The symmetry of these events, when viewed in hindsight, suggests a media choreography far more intricate than coincidence. In private circles, this has led to significant concern. Media watchdogs and parenting advocates have questioned the ethics of involving a child's image in brand recovery. While Lilibet remains largely shielded from the public eye, the use of her photo in this context has raised red flags. Critics argue that even when done with good intentions, such tactics blur the boundaries between parenting and PR, between love and leverage. Moreover, this strategy risks undermining the Sussexes' own stated values. Since stepping away from the royal family, both Harry and Meghan have emphasized the importance of authenticity, emotional truth, and rejecting the performative nature of royal life. And yet, if the Lilibet photo was indeed conceived as a carefully crafted PR moment, one with ties to Netflix's broader promotional timeline, then it raises uncomfortable questions. Are they not simply replacing one performance for another? Is their version of authenticity still shaped by image consultants, media lawyers, and strategic visual rollouts? Further complicating matters is the continued silence from Alexi Lubomirski. His refusal to openly discuss the shoot, combined with subtle public distancing from the project, suggests that even he may have felt uneasy about the motivations behind the session. Several photographers familiar with his work have remarked on how out of character it was for Lubomirski to exclude the photo from his professional portfolio for such a long time. One of his former colleagues went so far as to say, Alexi has always prided himself on the integrity of the moment. The fact that he didn't trumpet this image like he did the wedding portrait speaks volumes. He knew something felt off. This leads to the core of the issue, the transition of the Sussexes from royal representatives to media proprietors. In the royal system, images are curated, yes, but there is an institutional framework of accountability. In the media world, especially in the personal brand economy, there are fewer checks, fewer rules, and far more incentive to manipulate emotion for engagement. The Lilibet photo, when viewed through this lens, becomes more than a lovely portrait. It becomes a junction point, a place where legacy and media collided, a place where innocence was captured, polished, and placed at the service of a billion-dollar deal. And it worked. The Netflix documentary received massive viewership. The Sussexes, for a brief time, reclaimed their narrative. The public conversation shifted, however temporarily, from scandal to sympathy. And at the center of that emotional pivot was one soft, golden-tinted photo of a little girl named Lilibet. But was the price of that pivot a loss of credibility? As more evidence surfaces suggesting that even that moment was staged with commercial alignment in mind, the backlash continues to grow. What was once viewed as strategic genius is now being re-examined as moral compromise. For a couple who built their brand on truth-telling and transparency, the revelations surrounding this photo threaten to erode that foundation. It's a cautionary tale of the modern media age, where sincerity and scripting walk side by side, and where every image, no matter how personal, may be part of a bigger business plan. For those familiar with the geography of royal history, Frogmore Cottage is more than just a house on Windsor's sprawling estate. It is a symbol. A place wrapped in layers of symbolism, solitude, and tension. It's where Harry and Meghan first settled after their wedding, and it became the site of both their new beginning and their slow, quiet disentanglement from the royal machine. So, when the Lilibet Diana birthday photo was revealed to have been taken at Frogmore, the emotional resonance was immediately powerful. But as questions grew about the image's authenticity, attention shifted sharply to the location itself. What actually happened at Frogmore that day? What elements of the setting were genuine? And what may have been artfully manipulated? The public's association with Frogmore is twofold. On one hand, it's remembered as a gift from Queen Elizabeth II to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, a romantic gesture offering them privacy and a home base within the royal fold. On the other hand, it became the epicenter of tension, especially when the couple chose to leave their senior royal roles and relocate to the United States. The house was vacated, renovated, and later entangled in financial controversy over who would repay the taxpayer-funded refurbishments. Against that backdrop, its reappearance in the Lilibet photo felt deliberate. Was it a subtle nod to reconciliation? Or a visual assertion of territory and belonging? According to individuals familiar with the shoot, the use of Frogmore was as strategic as the photo itself. The cottage was reportedly dressed and staged days before the actual birthday gathering. Gardeners worked overtime to manicure the grounds, and a specialist landscaping team, allegedly not employed by the Crown Estate, was brought in to shape the garden view from the angle Lubomirski intended to use. The area chosen for the photo was not random. It had been marked and tested for lighting, backdrop, and visual framing. Even the position of the sun was tracked over several days to ensure the photo would be taken at exactly the right time to capture a soft, golden hue. This meticulous preparation suggests that the Sussexes were not interested in capturing a spontaneous memory. They wanted a moment that looked effortless while being anything but. According to a crew member involved in logistical setup, everything had been pre-measured. Camera angles were tested, props were swapped in and out. It wasn't a birthday celebration, they were building a scene. It's unclear how much of the setup was visible to invited guests. Reports say only a very limited number of friends and staff were present during the shoot, and none of them shared any public documentation or photos of the event. In fact, despite being a first birthday, a milestone moment typically full of laughter, mess, and spontaneous images, there were no candid group photos released. No family images. No side shots of Meghan or Harry blowing out candles or playing with their daughter. Just the one image, pristinely composed and singularly released. The minimalism of that release suggests something deeper, control. But it also begs the question, what were they trying to obscure? One growing theory is that elements of the garden itself may have been digitally enhanced or constructed. In post-production analysis, several photographic experts noted inconsistencies in depth of field, shadow placement, and the diffusion pattern around the child. Some claimed that the background looked too clean, too untouched by the natural randomness of a lived-in space. Others suggested that the shot might have been layered, combining multiple exposures or edited frames to create a composite image that felt organic but was meticulously constructed. This wouldn't be the first time such techniques were used in celebrity portraiture. Fashion magazines regularly blend shots for lighting balance and subject clarity. But applying that practice to a child's birthday portrait and passing it off as a natural, heartfelt moment crosses into questionable territory. Even the cottage itself became a character in the controversy. Meghan and Harry had vacated the property months prior, choosing to raise their children primarily in California. Yet, they opted to return to Frogmore not only for the Jubilee, but for this photo opportunity. Why? Some believe it was about optics. By returning to the cottage, however temporarily, they could symbolically reinsert themselves into the royal narrative. A kind of visual claim to British roots, to continuity. They didn't need the palace's permission to use Frogmore. The lease was reportedly still in their name. But its use as the location of such a globally significant image served as a quiet assertion that they were still very much part of the royal bloodline, whether the firm acknowledged it or not. Others argue that the setting was chosen to contrast the toxicity they had described in previous interviews. By showing Lilibet playing in the same environment they once portrayed as oppressive, they might be attempting to reclaim the space on their own terms, suggesting that it's not the physical place that was the problem, but the people they left behind. Still, some details refuse to align. Frogmore Cottage has limited external open areas suitable for wide-lens photography without visible structures or distractions. And yet, in the photo, Lilibet appears isolated in what looks like a vast, seamless patch of private garden. Some observers have questioned whether the location was subtly edited to remove signs of fencing, walkways, or maintenance equipment. While this wouldn't be unheard of in professional photography, doing so while publicly claiming authenticity turns the exercise into something closer to image management than memory preservation. Adding to this uncertainty are reports from nearby royal staff who were stationed at Windsor during the Jubilee. According to one source, there was surprisingly little traffic or noise near Frogmore on the day of the shoot. You'd expect a child's birthday to be full of activity, caterers, balloons, music. We saw very little. It was quiet, almost unusually so. This observation suggests the party may have either been staged in segments or reduced in scale to accommodate filming and photography. Notably, there are no verified images of Lilibet interacting with any of her royal cousins during the event. Princess Charlotte, Prince George, and Prince Louis were all present in Windsor that week for the Jubilee. And yet, none appeared at the party, or at least not in any way that was shared with the public. Given the historical significance of such a meeting, their absence from the official record feels conspicuous. So what was real at Frogmore? Was Lilibet's joy genuine? Without question. Every account from the shoot confirmed she was a happy, well-behaved child enjoying the attention and freedom of the moment. But the environment built around her was anything but spontaneous. From the imported props to the carefully timed shoot schedule, from the architectural constraints of the cottage to the mystery of the guests who were never pictured. The entire affair begins to look less like a birthday party and more like a media stage dressed to resemble one. Even more curiously, days after the photo's release, rumors began circulating that the Sussexes had again vacated Frogmore, this time permanently. It was said they had moved out most of their remaining belongings and had no intention of using the cottage again. If true, that would mean the photo was not just the last official image taken of Lilibet in the UK, it may have been the Sussexes' final visual claim to the royal soil that once defined them. And that, in itself, is powerful. Because if the photo was meant to be a goodbye, then its perfection was not only understandable, it was essential. Every blade of grass, every color tone, every choice and setting had to communicate one thing, that despite everything, despite the rift, the accusations, the continents between them, this family still knew how to tell a story. And they would do so, even from a cottage they no longer called home. In the end, Frogmore Cottage may have been the most carefully selected prop in the entire image. A silent participant in a farewell that was less about presence and more about possession. Less about celebration, more about curation. It's a reminder that in the modern age of media-savvy royals, even the soil beneath your feet can be part of the strategy. In the hours and days after the release of the now infamous Lilibet Diana birthday photo, the world responded as expected, with adoration, fascination, and a collective exhale. For supporters of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the image represented a return to innocence, a rare, wholesome moment amid years of scandal, confrontation, and speculation. But as the dust settled and deeper analysis crept in, another question emerged from beneath the surface sheen of the portrait. Was this just a smart PR maneuver? Or was it part of a deliberate attempt to obscure, manipulate, or even deceive the public? The answer to that question is layered, complex, and deeply revealing about the world Harry and Meghan now operate in. At the core of this debate is intent. Was the photo, with all its charm and visual warmth, simply a product of modern branding, a calculated but honest depiction of a private moment? Or did it cross the line into strategic fabrication, built with the goal of manufacturing public perception in ways that would later bolster commercial success? Critics argue the latter. From the beginning, signs of overcalibration clung to the image like static. The lighting was too